Hey everybody, welcome to DM's Craft, and as you know, I'm DM Scotty. It's great to have you with me again. Before I talk about the topic today, I just wanted to say that I'm just overwhelmed by the positive reinforcement that people have given me in the comments, and I'm just really happy that I'm helping other DMs to bring their visions to life for the game table. I realize that some DMs, there's a whole spectrum of DMs. There's the people and players. There's the DMs and players that want to be totally in the imagination, and then there's other DMs like me that like to bring the world to life with little miniatures and setups, and that can get very expensive. So anything you can do to craft your own stuff, especially out of trash, cardboard or cardstock, and a little bit of paint and hot glue, can save you a lot of money as far as miniature items, because those can, as you know, if you price any of those, they can be very expensive. And so I really wanted to bring the kind of awesome setups and terrain to the gaming table without breaking the bank. So I'm glad people have just embraced this and run with it, and they've even given me some ideas on things to do. And like I say, I'd like you to join me on my Google Plus page. I can talk a little more or answer your questions on that page, because on Facebook, or I mean on YouTube, it's very limited on the amount of time you can spend talking. So you can post and counter post, and it's just so much nicer to be able to talk. And I can also post pictures and that kind of thing. So if you're at all interested in that, just please join me on my Google Plus page. I'd love to have you. I'd love to see your pictures also. I'm trying to have it more of a forum for everyone to just give crafting ideas or talk about topics that I talk about, or comment on topics I talk about. So okay, well, I got that out of the way. So let's go on to the topic today, and it's pillars. So last time we did doors, very basic dungeon feature, and pillars are a very basic dungeon feature. They can add a lot of spice to a room. This craft is for doing 3D pillars. You could always do 2D pillars, just put them on the tile themselves. But these are for actual 3D pillars that stick up. Because as you know, I like to use 3D items on the game tiles themselves, just to spice it up a bit. So, but these are very cheap to make, very easy to make, and they'll really spice up your tiles. Not only give you some cover and block line of sight, which is really nice. Just having an open room can be really boring. So pillars can not only give a certain feel to a room, they can be practical by blocking line of sight and movement. So they can be really fun in combats. So I think we're set to go, and let's go to the crafting table. I'll see you there. So here's my materials here. Now I've got some cardstock, and this is about the thickness of a cereal box. You could use that too. Now you see all these lines I've got on here. Basically what I've done is I'm going to make the pillars, and we'll do the body of the pillar by using 4 squares and then a flap. So I basically got 4 pillars on here. Now all I did for these is I just used the ruler, drew, used the ruler, drew, used the ruler, drew, and then each of the pillars is going to be 4 inches high, so I measured 4, and that's where this line comes in. The extra, I just made some parts because I'm going to have some embellishments on the pillar. These will be the tops of the pillars, so I just wanted to show what all this meant. This is here, I did some extra for some embellishment because it wouldn't all fit on this sheet. So what I'll do is I want to cut out the pillars first, so I'll just okay. So now that's 2 pillars in the end, so I'll cut the end off. Okay, so now I've got 2 pillars there. Now I'll cut this in half. Okay, now let's just look at one of these here. Okay, so this will be one of my pillars. So what I'm going to do is I want to crease this, so I'm going to use my ruler here. And I'm going to use the edge with the metal on it, and I'll just put it on the line and kind of crease it, and then bend it a little more by hand. I'll do the same with the next one. Next crease. This helps, using the ruler helps you keep it straight. And the last one here. Okay. So now I've got the 4 sides and a flap. So what I'm going to do is glue that with the glue gun, like that. So I'll go ahead and do that. Now I'm going to use my smaller glue gun because it's more detailed work than the bigger one. So. I want to hold that. It can help to hold it on the ground or on the table, that way you can get it straight. Just hold it for a few seconds. And there, I've got the start of my pillar. Okay. So next I'm going to put the top on this pillar. So what I'll do for the top is I'll use these pieces I've cut. So I'll cut one off. And then I'm going to use my ruler to bend it on the flaps there. So now I've got a little piece with some flaps. So then kind of test fit it in the pillar. Some ways it might, you're not measuring exactly, so some ways it might fit better than others. So with that, let's see, that looks pretty good. Now I'll try it the other way. Actually, it looks like it might be better that way, so I'll do it that way. So just remember what you did. So now I'll use my glue gun, get the tops in there. Make sure you hold it so it gets in place. And that looks good. Looks like we have our top to our pillar now. So we're on our way. So now we'll move to the next piece will be, we'll start some embellishment. Okay, so now what I'm going to do next is start to put some embellishment on this. Now I've got these pieces here, and I'll show you how it's going to work. Okay, so I will cut this here. Okay, so I want to have like kind of a triangular pattern on these pieces. So what I'll do is I've marked each spot, 2 spots, here and here, and then the top. So I'm just going to cut from the top to the edge. So I'll just go like that. So I've got a piece like this. So, and I'm going to save these little triangle pieces because I'm going to use them later on. So I'll attach this to the pillar. So there we go. Okay, so I've got that on there. So now I want to do a shorter version. So I've got smaller ones here. And basically what I did was, for this one, these are each 2 inches. So from here to here is 2 inches. Then I measured it 1/2 inch down and did the marks on each, and then 1/2 inch in the center. So with these, with the other one that's going to go on there, I made it 1 inch, and then I'm going to cut these off. So this is 1 inch in length, and I'm going to put it right here. So so I just measured 1 inch, and then at the 1/2 inch point, I put the little marks and then the mark on top, so I could cut it in the triangular pattern. So now I'll glue that on there. Okay, so now I've got that. Now I want to use these little pieces as embellishments, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that next. So now what I'm going to do with these small triangles that I cut off is I'm going to glue them on. But since they're so small, it can be really, really tricky with the glue gun. You don't want to burn yourself with it. So what I'm going to do is just use some white glue. They'll bond almost instantly to this cardboard. So I'll just grab one of those and squirt some white glue on there. And don't worry if you get a little extra, too much on there. This stuff dries invisible, and it doesn't beat up very thick. So even if you put a bunch on, it won't show up. So there we go. I've got the smaller triangle on the bottom, this next piece, and then the larger piece. Now I'm also going to do a little piece at the top. So I'll take one of these. So this is a good way you can think of like little scrap pieces you end up with. You can add a little bit of extra interest to stuff like this. So I'll just put this at the top here. So there we go. So now I've got the piece at the top and the piece at the bottom, and then these details come up the side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do all 4 sides of this pillar, and then we'll come back and we'll do the base. So I want to do a base on the pillar. So what I'm going to do is I measured 2 by 2 squares on regular cardboard, and I'll just cut those out. You could cut these with the razor knife, but it's easy to cut them with scissors since they're so small. Okay, so there's my base, and I'm going to set the pillar near the center of the base, but I want to add a little more interest to the base. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim the corners off, and I'm eyeballing this, I'm not measuring it. So now I'll go ahead and glue that on the base. Try to get it as close to the center as you can. I'm just eyeballing it. All right. So there I've got it on the base. That gives it a lot more stability. I'm going to do one more thing, and then I'll be finished up with this pillar. This is an extra step you wouldn't have to do, but I've decided that I want to do it for mine. I don't like that you can see the corrugation around that edge, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover it up. So I've measured a 1/8 of an inch strip on my cardstock. So I'll just cut that out. Okay, so I've got my strip. And now I'll start wrapping it around the base. So I'll put glue in there. I've got a corner, so I'm going to bend it, and then I'll bend it again. So I'll bend it out. Make it a little easier to put the glue on. Don't do too much at once. Make sure that's secure before you move to the next edge. Okay, so now the excess, I'm just going to snip that off. Any loose strands off there. All right. So there we go. I've got my base, and it has an edge. You don't see the corrugation. So there we go. One pillar for a dwarven hall. Now we will base paint this black, and then we'll paint it up. Here's my pillar. It's all base painted black. So now I'm going to add some gray. I'm going to use a large brush and wet it down a bit with some water. Just thin it out a little bit. I'll just now always remember when you're using acrylic that generally it will dry darker than you put it on. Okay, I thought I had a little variance to this pillar, and I'm going to use a blue. It's a light blue, and I'm just gonna get it on the brush, kind of dab it on the brush like this, and then just kind of speckle it on the pillar. More. So I'll add some variation. Okay. So I've got that painted. So I'll let that dry and then I'll move to the next step. So I've got my pillar here, it's all dry. I could also use the texture paint on this, but I prefer to just hand paint this kind of stuff. But yeah, you could always use the texture paint on it. And see, it has these nice little details on it, but they're hard to see with the gray. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a fairly thin brush, and I'm going to get it wet, my water, and I'll dip it in some black and get the black fairly wet, so very liquidy. And then I'm going to kind of do what I do in the dungeons. I'm going to trace along the edge. And see how that really kind of pops that out. So now I'll do the rest of the pillar. And remember, I'm not using the black at full strength. It's watered down. Okay, now I'm going to do around the bottom edge here. So it really starts to give that some definition as far as, and when it dries it'll be lighter than it is currently. And I've got those little notches at the top too. See how that almost disappears? So I'm gonna get those two. You can also take a little bit of black and scuff it up a little bit. And that black dries pretty quick. So I'm basically ready for my next step. And I'm going to do the highlighting step. And you really don't want to skip this step. It adds a lot to the project, so we'll do that now. Now I'm going to use my light gray. Now I'm going to use a chisel edge brush. And like I say, these aren't special brushes. I just buy a pack of brushes in a big box store, and or you know, kind of like a hobby store, and you can get like a pack of them, like maybe for $10 for a whole pack. So these aren't, you know, expensive brushes. These are just cheap brushes. So what I'm going to do, this is kind of a chisel edge brush. So I'm going to pick up my light gray on the edge. I'm not diluting this, but I want to get enough on the brush to do what I'm doing, but not oversaturate the brush. Now, this is not really necessarily a dry brush. What I'm doing is I'm trying to pull out the edges of the project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the edge of my brush and go along that sharp point and just drag it along that sharp point. Okay, now I'm also going to do the edges of the pillar. I'm just dragging it along the edge. So take a look at that, how that just really pops out. Look at that detail. It just really stands out, and your players, you don't want your players to miss all this detail because you put all this work into it. So it's a great way to do it. So we'll do the rest of the pillar. And each side is the same, so it won't matter. Oh, also you want to do the base, so I'm going to go around the edge of the base. So I'll do like this. So I'm just dragging the corner of the brush across that sharp edge, and that just picks that edge right out. So there we go. Now I'll do the rest of the pillar, and then we'll show you what it looks like when it's done. So here we go. Here's an example of the pillars on a tile. I think they look really nice. They're very light. They're just made out of cardstock. So that's a great way you can add a lot of interest to a tile easily and cheaply. You can make as many of these as you need. Now I tried to make it at a dwarven style because I was using like a dwarven fortress, but you could make them any style. You could make them rounded. You could make them in different ways. Or like a hexagonal type shape. You could even use toilet rolls and use those as pillars. So that's they're a little fatter than these, but that would easily work. I'm also going to show I have a Hearst Arts mold that has a pillar base, and to make a Hearst Arts pillar, you gotta mold the mold multiple times. So I figured, well, I just make the base and then I'd make the pillar out of the same method I did this. So I'm going to show that on a video coming up. But that's a great way to make pillars, and I'll see you next time on DM's Craft.